On Thursday, March 2nd, 2023, Nordstrom announced that they were closing all 13 of their Canadian stores. That includes the Eaton Centre Mall location in Toronto, as well as the Nordstrom Rack on Yonge and Bloor. They told the media that they have not been profitable since 2014. That's exactly what I told the media in my post. In fact, 2013 would be the last year that my store was profitable. I exited the mall from my 5th location in April of 2014, and I returned to move 4 times, and none of those locations were profitable. In fact, I paid to be there. On June 1st, 2017, I made a Facebook post telling the world that my store was not profitable, as were almost everyone else who exited the mall, who I watched come and go after being a tenant in that mall for 18 years. No one could make it in retail. It didn't matter what you were selling, whether you were a department store or whether you were a little kiosk in the middle of the shopping center. Very, very few were successful. And that remains to be seen if those even are successful and have been able to pull through over the last many years they've been in business. We won't know until people come forward and tell their story like I did, and tell the world that it is virtually impossible to be a retailer anywhere, in my opinion, in this country, selling clothing or anything of a retail nature in a mega mall. I warned this country of the economic meltdown that was headed our direction if things didn't drastically change, and they never did. More stores opened, hundreds more closed, and the media never reported on any of this. They just let it all go, pretended it didn't happen. And the closures continued, and the openings continued, and more closures, and more openings, and no one really got to the reason why retail was suffering the way it was. The experts are useless, and they blame superficial, non-existent issues as to why retail is collapsing. They blame the stores. It's always the store's fault. And in my opinion, it's not the store's fault at all. For it to be the store's fault in my store and Nordstrom's store, you would have to blame hundreds, if not thousands, of brands. We are multi-brand stores. We are not just one brand. I can't just say it's Oakley's fault when Oakley was just one brand in my store. Speedo was another. Nordstrom is the same way. In fact, I've never placed the blame on the stores. This is the biggest catastrophe ever, of epic proportions, and we haven't seen anything yet. We have allowed these mega malls to have way too much power and control and domination over our entire country. These landlords have abused their tenants, and this abuse has gone on my entire life. This isn't anything new. It just took some time for me to realize how bad the abuse was. The retailers are always blamed for the failure of their store. And if I ever thought I was to blame and it was something I did, or it was my vendor's fault, any of my brands that I carried, or my staff when I had them, I would have said so, and I wouldn't have pursued this quest. I do not believe it was any of that. I have, since day one of writing the post, blamed the landlord, mostly, for their unrealistic rent gouging that has gone on for way too long. And as a vendor, as a retailer, I can't say anything. I just have to pay what they tell me. You really have no room for negotiation. And I've learned that by knowing what my rent was and what it became, and the moving I did, and the absolute disrespect that they showed me through this process. They didn't even show up in court. That was the biggest waste of my time, and it showed me what a disgrace our legal system is here in Canada. I spent 3 months preparing evidence, trying to defend myself because they stole my lawyer. Yeah. Field LLP was my trademark lawyer for my Vexy Vixen brand that disintegrated when they stole my store. They took everything I own in that business, in that store. It was over $1 million in retail merchandise and store fixtures and mannequins and display tables and personal items like my sewing machine, ladders, drills, all kinds of stuff. My curling iron, money that my mom gave me for my birthday, and the birthday card. After everything I've been through with this country, to this day, none of them have spoken with me. They do so subliminally through hurting me, torturing me, damaging my products that I'm selling, damaging my electronic devices remotely. And today I can say I have clarity. And I want to say thank you to Nordstrom for coming clean with the information that you were not profitable in Canada since 2014, just like I wasn't profitable in Canada since 2014. We are both mid to high-end brand apparel, and I believe there are many, many more to follow. This is only the beginning. We don't know the numbers of how bad the debt is for rent. It's just sitting in arrears, and these mega malls, they know what's headed their direction. And it's terrifying to even think of how bad this could possibly get. Because we are sitting with Canadian mega malls that are all identical. They are all trading the same brands. It's so repetitive. When I thought I would start fresh and move to Toronto, I had a whole U-Haul filled with merchandise that they didn't steal, that was in my home. It escaped the terror of the mall theft, the heist, the robbery, whatever you want to call it. It escaped all of that. It was in my garage. My plan was to come to Toronto and open a new store here with that merchandise and see if the market was better here. Came with an open mind. I came knowing that my competitors were here, Swimco, Bikini Village, was also a cute little shop that I noticed on Young Street when I was visiting, and I thought this might be the answer. This might be the place to try. And when I got here, I had to battle the lockdown, so everything was closed. And then that forced me back into starting my new channel up again and researching what is going on here in the retail industry before I decide to commit to doing this all over again and it failing here too. So I did that. I went to every single mall that I could, and I documented what I saw. I snuck in there with my iPhone and I secretly recorded all the stores, and I was kicked out of the malls many times doing so when I was noticed. But I wanted to know what's going on here in Toronto before I decide to sign another lease. That I have trauma signing leases now. And that was when I realized this is the same game as in Edmonton. It almost feels like it's the same owners. Every single mall looks identical. They're all trading the same store brands. It's so communist. That's what I call it. That's what it is. It's communism. There is no opportunity here on a retail level, and they have saturated their malls with the same communist options in every one of them. So when you see that, you realize that this is not an accident, and that there is no way that all of these malls did this on their own. There's some sort of pact going on between them where they only let certain stores trade. And they have a whole grasp on our entire commercial real estate industry. And you don't get in if they don't want you in. And then if you do get in, they know from doing this as many years as they have, they know what rent will put you under. They know this game way too well. It's such an unfair trade situation, and the tenants always lose. So they have managed to control what we buy, where we buy it, who trades, who doesn't. This goes into grocery stores and everything. You don't trade if you don't have a lease and a place to trade. And they decide. These mega malls have been given this power over our entire economy to decide what we wear and what we don't wear. If they don't like women in bathing suits, they own the malls. They can eliminate bathing suits. And there are countries where bathing suits are not allowed. Muslim women do not wear bathing suits. They came into my store asking for bikinis, bathing suits that go to your wrist and bathing suits that go to your ankles. That is not my demographic, and that is not my customer, and it never has been. Yeah. It's a whole nother subject. Touchy subject. Because the moment you go there, you're labeled racist. Or it's hate speech. Whatever they want to label you as, the bad person. So I need to thank Nordstrom for coming out and calling it as it was and as it happened, to publicly say that we haven't made money since 2014. When Iranian men don't like women wearing bathing suits, They can make that happen when they own their real estate and they dictate who trades and who doesn't. And when a woman speaks up, she's silenced. She's told she's not allowed to talk. And that's what happens. On June 1st, I spoke up and I wrote a post asking our leaders to come down and talk to me about retail. The very next day, I had 10 people in my store turning the lights off, shutting me down, and they stole everything. They told me to take the post down. I said no. And when I refused, I was escorted out by mall security, and I never saw any of my merchandise ever again. This is so illegal. But they have the police on their side who don't do anything. They have it all on their side. It's a game that isn't very favorable to tenants. And I'm sure I'm not the only one that this has happened to. Yeah. Nordstrom's announcement should be the biggest wake-up call to not just the land devils, but the public in general. Because these are women's jobs that are disappearing. Because we allowed these men in suits to have this much power and control over our trade, that they allowed this rent gouging and control to happen. And I don't see this ending well, unfortunately. And I've tried, and I've tried, and I've tried to tell people. Nobody listens. Nobody cares. Even still, the reporters aren't out there asking the real questions. They're not asking Nordstrom what their rent was in all of their locations. How far in arrears are they? Where is their debt coming from? What are the real problems? The media is to blame for this collapse that is going to happen. That is happening. That's been happening. Because they have had a media blackout on all of this information that should be public. So retailers can make informed decisions before they sign a lease in this country. Scary times ahead. I pray for everyone. Yeah, it's bad.